What is going on, guys? Skull Rider here. Welcome to the 5th installment of this series, where, wow, it's crazy that we've made it a month, guys. We're a month into this challenge. Now, if you're watching and aren't sure what exactly this challenge is, I recommend you go and check out my previously uploaded video titled A Very Important Channel Announcement. But to give you all a super quick and brief summary, this challenge has me listening to an album a day from a list off Rate Your Music, which consists of the most highly rated albums on the site. In each of these weekly progress reports, I will be ranking and discussing each of the albums that I listened to in this past week. But yeah, with all that aside, let's get right into the content. Alright, first up we got At the Mountain of Madness by the group Electric Masada. So right off the bat, this album was just wow. Like, this has to be the most interesting and the most bold jazz fusion record I have ever heard. Granted, I haven't heard a lot, but I mean, this was insane. I felt like this record, at least for the more chaotic songs, was literally on the borderline of music like I can't really describe with words. But pretty much what I can say is that this was truly a musical journey. The seamless transitions between rock and jazz, like especially in the track Metal Tove, just so good. Honestly, I don't think I've heard any artist combine the two genres better. Also, a lot of these songs would just end super suddenly too, like you had no idea where any of these tracks were going. This album was definitely more bipolar than other albums that kind of go between really fast and chaotic songs and just slow and mellow. Like these were the two utmost extremes here on this record. Like, it seriously went from some of the most crazy tracks I've ever heard to ones that you could just totally zone out to. And not to mention a lot of Middle Eastern elements in this record too, especially in the more toned down songs. Like, this album is just seriously a musical masterpiece. So yeah, this album completely blew me away, and for that, I mean, I feel like I need to give it S tier. Like, I can certainly see how people would find this record to be pretty annoying noise at times, but the musicianship behind it is absolutely incredible. And for that, I think I have to put it above the other two records on S tier and place it at the very top. Okay, album 337, we got Africa / Brass by the John Coltrane Quartet. So, yeah, this was definitely a Coltrane record. And because of that, it was, of course, some really solid bebop-inspired jazz tunes. Some things that really stuck out to me on this one was the one heck of a drum solo on the first track. The instrumentals in general on that track also just kind of made you feel like as if you were wandering around in the wilderness. Also kind of random, but the song Greensleeves seemed to have a melody that sounded like the What Child Is This hymnal, so that was definitely throwing me off quite a bit. But it was still a really cool song. The bass line was really solid for that one. But yeah, I honestly don't have too much more to say about this record. Just your standard but really solid Coltrane. So because I thought that Olé, the Coltrane album that appeared earlier in this challenge, had a lot more creative elements in it, I don't think that I can put this record quite up there with that one yet. And honestly, this album didn't really have much of any wow factors for me, so I'm not sure if I can put it in A tier either. But for the fact that this is still an extremely well crafted and creative jazz album, I'm gonna put it at the top of B. Okay, next up we got Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen. So prior to this, I really haven't heard much at all from Springsteen, pretty much just Born in the USA. And that song wasn't really anything like what I heard on this record, but the similarities were that overall this album still had a very poppy and soulful feel to it. I felt like there was this urgency throughout the album, but at the same time, it was also really happy sounding, so it really was such an interesting combo. Some of the songs definitely sounded like the opening of an 80s sitcom, but hey, I was all here for that. I would say the biggest strength of this album was definitely Springsteen's vocals. Like, all the raw emotion and energy that he was able to capture, especially in the song Born to Run, like, that was a dang good track. And so was the closing track, Jungle Land. That was just a wonderful closer. Honestly, with a few songs that were 10 out of 10 and not a single miss, this has gotta be an easy A tier. We will definitely put this one higher for sure. Well, alright, this live Miles Davis album at 335 marks the end of the first month of this challenge, and also is where I technically lose, because this thing was 7.5 hours long. So yes, because I did not listen to this entire thing, I technically have in fact lost this challenge. 'Cause you had a bad day. But if you all graciously cut me some slack and are enjoying this content, I will gladly continue making these videos. But hey, I still listened to quite a bit of this album, and it was pretty dang good from what I've heard, so I guess I'm eventually going to have to listen to the rest of it. This was just a super fun and playful bebop record, but also in no way just any typical bebop record. Mainly because, man, the sound that Miles can make on the trumpet is just crazy. Truly, no one else plays like this guy, or ever will play like this guy. The blend between the mellow and outright crazy trumpet playing is totally insane. Like, I think out of all of the jazz albums that I've listened to for this challenge, this one has to have the best improv. And I mean, just for that fact alone, it's already gonna have to go towards the top of A tier. So yeah, because I really am ranking this thing pretty high, I will have to listen to the rest of it eventually. Alright, next up we have Hot Buttered Soul by Isaac Hayes. That was a little bit uncomfortable to say. You know, I think this is actually an album that I did listen to in its entirety before, but I must not have been really paying attention to it or something, because the only track that actually had any familiarity was the closing one. One thing I really noticed this time around was this album was just so many things, man. So many elements of so many things. I'm just gonna get the negatives out of the way here real quick, because I pretty much only have good things to say about this record. So, I mean, really the only element of criticism that I could have with this was that some vocal parts I thought were repeated too many times, specifically in the opening track, but at the same time there was always like a twist towards the end of the repeating cycles that always caught me off guard. And the monologue in the last track was a wee bit long, but the story was extremely engaging and passionate and transitioned beautifully into the music of the track. But now on to the positives. Let me just say that this is probably the best soul record I've ever heard. Which may not really be saying much, as I really haven't listened to a lot of soul music. And all the really subtle sounds in this album were just wild and perfectly placed. And as for sounds of specific instruments, like just the noise that the guitar and the keys were able to make is what I think was the best part about them, on top of playing extremely beautiful melodies. Though as a side note, I might be tripping here, but it seriously sounded like there was a part of the keys in the second track that was sampled in the Public Enemy record that I listened to earlier in this challenge. But I'm not 100% sure, so if someone wants to double check me on that, that would be great. But anyways, now for the ranking. I think this album is really close to an S, but unfortunately not quite there. But I will put it at the top of A, because what I will say is that while I do love extremely complex music, there's something about this kind of music that's perfected this amazing sense of emotion, and on top of that still has to boast an extremely wide array of instrumentals, all perfectly placed. But because I thought the third and the fourth tracks were a bit lackluster compared to the other tracks on here, like, not to say they were bad tracks, but I thought the other two were much better. But anyway, taking this into account, yep, I've decided that this album is going on the top of A. Okay, album 333. We got Repetition by Unwound. Okay, this album was just wow. Let me just get the negative out of the way real quick and say that the beginning was not great. It was mainly the repetitive screaming vocals I didn't love, but thankfully that trend did not continue at all in any of the other tracks on here. So that may have been what really saved the record for me. But even if that did happen, I think it still would have been pretty easy to overlook ultimately, as there were a whole lot of really cool instrumental breakdowns on here. There were just countless guitar riffs that I got lost in. The more toned down stuff I thoroughly enjoyed as well. Like, there were points where it even got dissonant, so I guess you could call it like ambient rock at some parts. It was really cool. Like, there were times that instrumentals in this record, especially with the guitar, could give off these Godspeed You Black Emperor vibes. We will cover those guys later, I'm sure. But, like, I hope I'm actually right in saying that this is post-rock, because this album is very post-rock sounding for sure. Oh, I guess Rate Your Music has it listed as post-hardcore, which I don't know if that's the same thing. But yeah, this was like rock music, but all the instrumentals actually had time to breathe. Like, this record had a more raw sounding feel to it than even most of the other experimental rock stuff that's been on here so far. This was full of so many twists and turns, like, especially in the track to Dallas and Take a Left, like, that song just went through a literal metamorphosis, like, okay, sheesh. But yeah, this album may just have to be S tier for me. You know what? Yeah, this is definitely S tier actually. Like, this thing just took my breath away, and even though there were one or two tracks I wasn't super into, I'm sure that they'll grow on me. But yeah, just for the fact that this album left me completely stunned, S tier. Alright, finally we got the Ape of Naples by Coil. So this is actually a record that I've heard before, and I really loved it when I first gave it a listen. And second time around, I can say that I still really enjoy it. Honestly, listening to it again was like a whole different experience. The first and closing tracks were just as, if not more amazing than the first time around. Like, those tracks really just hit differently. Especially Going Up, like, that is just a track that transcends music itself, man. One slight bit of criticism that I will give this record though is that some of the songs definitely dragged a bit, especially the last portion of The Last Amethyst Deceiver. But overall, this album still had such a unique feel to it. There's just so many different unique elements that were combined together. The goth-esque vocals, the ambient electronic noises, and the very rare instruments you don't often see, such as the accordion, all making an appearance on this record. And this album could really turn on you at a whim, especially at the point when It's in My Blood starts playing and then just proceeds to go into multiple tracks that are just despair-ridden. But yeah, there were so many epic moments instrumentally. Now, as for the placement of this bad boy, that's definitely going to be tough. I don't think it's quite S tier, so we'll put it right above the two jazz records in A, just because the kind of sound Coil is producing on this album is just more appealing and interesting to me personally. Well, alright guys, that'll do it for this video. I would really enjoy your guys' feedback. If you like this, let me know, hit that like button, and I will be back next week with some more musical content. Peace out.